you saw the very best players the entire country has to offer, and you saw it throughout the course of the weekend.
He's growing, he's improving at such a rapid rate. He's going to be a very good player.
This guy's a cross between Sean Marion and Lamar Odom. He's a 6'8" lefty, a high-level athlete, but also got a little bit of point-forward skills in him as he can handle and pass the ball extremely well. At this point, they are simply the standard by which everyone else is judged in prep school basketball. He's considering the likes of Michigan, North Carolina, Kentucky, Kansas.
Welcome back to the Upside Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Finkelstein, and this is the latest episode as we continue to dive into issues of racial inequality and social justice here in the United States. As we mentioned in the very first episode when we had Dr. Scott Brooks, we're committed to exploring this from different angles and trying to promote learning, understanding, and empathy as best we can. So while we normally approach things from the world of basketball, today we're going to pivot and we're going to look at the world of baseball. So a special thanks to our two guests, Claudell Clark, who is the Executive Director of the Hampton Roads Sports Commission and the Vice President of Sports for Hampton Roads Chamber. He's the former Director of Athletics at Norfolk State, also the head baseball coach. He played baseball at Norfolk State and played professionally after being drafted by the Pirates in 2001. Also here is Coach Roger Cador, who was a member of Major League Baseball's task force to improve African-American participation in baseball and a legendary coach at Southern University. He was actually an assistant in both baseball and basketball before becoming the head baseball coach in 1985, a 13-time SWAC Coach of the Year, and just as I said, absolutely legendary in the baseball world for the number of great players he coached, but also for the initiative he showed in developing an underfunded program. So, coaches, gentlemen, thank you so much for being here today.
Adam, thank you.
So, as in this series, what we've tried to do is as I said, educate and learn as much as we can from a variety of different people coming from a variety of different stories. The context with which we usually explore these stories is basketball, but there are some similar themes in the world of baseball. What I thought we might do is dive into a good place to start is to explore the relationship between you two, because while you both have coaching backgrounds, you didn't coach against each other, but you've been connected by similar interest, if that's fair to say. So I thought that would be a good place to start, is just the origins of your personal relationship.
Young's to always go first.
Well, always had tremendous respect for Coach Cador and his program, and a lot of us younger college baseball coaches, I call it, I don't know if I'm young anymore, but certainly looked up to the practices and the accomplishments and the ability to work under tough constraints as he had to at Southern all those years, being a limited resource institution, being an HBCU, fighting tough recruiting battles. And we kind of use that model to program or to operate our program. So great respect to Coach there. And like I said, as our program grew in profile, we would always kind of measure ourselves against what the SWAC was doing, never quite got on the same playing field. But we tried to say our draft picks versus theirs, our statistics versus theirs, some of the non-conference teams we played versus the guys we were playing, and kind of have a friendly gauge. And then ultimately, as we said earlier, coming together in maybe 2004, 2005 to kind of be together on a panel, that was a tremendous honor.
So, Coach, one of the questions is I have interviewed basketball coaches recently. My first question to them when things really started, and when things really started to escalate, and what I mean by that is, of course, we had George Floyd in Minneapolis, but we had not the same issue, but we had another very troubling issue on the same day in New York. So that very next day, Tuesday, is when we came in and started this series of podcasts. And what I asked friends of mine in college basketball's Black coaching community, I said, who is this generation's John Thompson? Who is this generation's Nolan Richardson? Who is this generation's John Chaney? And the answer is the leadership structure isn't quite as defined within the Black coaches community as it was a generation ago. I'll tell you what, though, one of the answers I got was, Well, we know who that person is in the baseball community, because Roger Cador is to baseball what John Thompson was to basketball, and that's kind of what led me down this road to you. So, talk to us a little bit about your work within not just the baseball world. It's just such a I don't know the thread to pull on to start it, because from what I've read of you in a very short time, you've accomplished so much. But maybe that's the best way is what do you think, as you look back on your career, what are you most proud of as a coach?
Well, the thing that I'm most proud of is that the great parents that I was able to come in contact with, and they trusted me with their most valuable resource, a kid. And the thing about it, I never really thought about. I know my wife, when she was alive, she used to tell me all the time, "You're doing too much, and maybe people don't appreciate what you're doing." And I never looked at it from that angle, and I never looked back. I just did what people did for me when I was coming up, and that's one of the things that's missing in today's society, is people forget that there were other people who helped them get to where they are now. And so I didn't forget that. But the greatest accomplishment that I got was, I don't remember what I did.
That's well said. Yeah.
I really didn't think about it a great deal, because every day was such a challenge to make sure my players didn't lose their focus from being positive. Remember, I got a lot of inner city kids who didn't have fathers and good leadership about it. So every day was a challenge for me to make sure something good came out of our relationship. And one of the things that I did on a daily basis is tell a true story. True story. Something I knew one day when they had their families. That true story more to them by telling it. So to me, the true stories I told is the greatest accomplishment I've achieved, because today they tell me about it. They call me, "Thanks for the true stories."
So what kind of, I was going to say, all right, so what kind of true stories would you tell here? Because this is, everybody, it might be different sports, it might be different areas of the country, but everybody on here at least was a coach. So I think these are the things that would resonate across different games. So what
Adam, is that I use the Bible reference a lot, because I knew at some point they were going to read the Bible with their family. And I thought about this one that really came up, about the time when Jesus told the apostles, if you had the belief of a seed, grain of mustard seed, you can talk to mountains and they'll move. The faith, he talked about, if you had the faith of a grain of mustard seed, you talk to mountains, they'll move. Well, 5 or 6 of my players have become ministers. But one case where my assistant coach son was born, and he had a very difficult moment. And they tried everything. And finally, they met a veteran doctor who said, "We're taking him off all medication." And he was crying, and he went home, and his mother put in a little wrapper, gave him something in his hand. He opened it, was a grain of mustard seed. And he said he darn near fell out, died. He ran back to tell me, "Coach, my mother gave me a grain of mustard seed. And say, if I have the faith of a grain of mustard seed, BJ is going to be all right." And BJ has grown up to be a beautiful, smart kid who's going to be a doctor. But I'm telling you, that's why you got to tell them. I know coaches tell stories and they lie to kids and they fake crying, but all of my stories were true, and my players appreciate them.
Well, you've also clearly, this is the first story I've ever heard you tell, but you have a way of delivering it that is obviously very compelling. So I'm sure it resonated with your players. Question I have for both of you, I think my audience to a large extent are very aware of the basketball landscape, and particularly with the challenges that come with it that correlate to race and racial injustice. What is the baseball landscape like? Are there any parallels? Are there any parallels between the two sports, or are things more or less challenging? Can you give us an idea, Claudell? Maybe we'll start with you if you don't mind. But what is the landscape like in the world of baseball now relative to some of these challenges that we're dealing with as a country today?
Certainly what we spoke to earlier as it relates to the accessibility to the sport of baseball, the ability to have young families and young athletes to have the resources to participate, the opportunities for those persons to move through the junior varsity, the varsity, the high school level, the pro level. There's stark challenges, very comparable to football and basketball, certainly in baseball. And I think Coach and I, on top of the things that he said, we're just so proud to be able to be in our post for the time we were, to give those families and those student athletes a chance to do something a lot of other schools and a lot of other even countries wouldn't allow them to do, which is realize the dream of college baseball, and in some cases move on to pro ball, but within most cases move on to successful careers. So certainly in college baseball and baseball alike, very challenging, especially for minorities to come up through those ranks. And we did, on top of our coaching duties, as much as we could in the community, in the youth sports world, to keep those channels open so they could matriculate through to high school and to their college.
And I know it just seems logical. I mean, I've got a 5-year-old, so I'm just starting to expect the cost of playing baseball. I mean, you got to go to the store, you got to get them a bat, you got to get them the glove, you got to get them the cleats. Where basketball, you don't have to bring anything. You just show up, they play. And so it would seem that right off the bat, I can certainly see why it's a bigger investment for kids who want to dive in to baseball, use that as a way to find structure in their lives. But then even when you get to the college level, because baseball is not a revenue producing sport, the money in terms of scholarships that you can use as a vehicle to help kids get an education is really limited. Could either one of you speak to that?
Well, you forgot to mention, after you bought all of those things for your son, you forgot to say, I got to give that coach a check.
Yeah.
That's what kills everything. You know what I'm saying? You have to play now. And that's the biggest drawback. When I was on the diversity committee with Major League Baseball, the commissioner's office, one of the things that we're going to really focus on is to eliminate a lot of those programs where people are just doing it for money, and have more of the high-end programs where kids are really developing. You get that? So because, and they have parents fooled. Parents don't know any better. They just want opportunity for their kids. And those makeshift coaches come in and sell them a pipe dream.
Right.
They don't teach the kids anything. And that's one of the things that give baseball a really bad reputation. Because now the parents are upset and they think all coaches are bad. In reality, that's not the case. As it relates to getting into college, you give kids 25%. How many African American kids can afford to pay 75%? So rather than that, they'll go play basketball and football where they can get what they call a full ride. That's what we like to say, a full ride. And that was one of the biggest issues we had to compete against for the really good players is you can't find enough dollars that you can put in their hands to make up for that void that the scholarship doesn't take care of. I think that's one thing that Major League Baseball maybe could do something with. But, if a kid is an academic kid, that will help some. But those kids are not going to get that academic money.
Now, this is a complete, I do not know the answer to this. There may be no correlation whatsoever because I am far from a baseball expert. But does the size of all of baseball's minor leagues, does that impact, is there a correlation between that and the lack of revenue in college baseball? Like you see single A, double A teams that are apparently profitable, but college baseball is considered a non-revenue sport. So I'm wondering if there's, if the minor leagues weren't quite as big, would that help feed college baseball into a more sustainable business model that could then allow coaches to be able to reinvest more money into their players, or is that just is that not a connection?
I think the just sheer size of the stadiums, the sheer size of the programs, and the sheer size of the sport on a college campus is secondary to your large basketball gym and your large football stadium. So just the sheer scale of the sports on the college level at most schools make it a non-revenue school or revenue sports. You have some Power 5 programs and some independent programs and a few programs in other conferences to where the stadium is large enough, the fan base is large enough, and the revenue structure is such to where the program makes money. But the expenses in college sports, especially baseball, and the type fan bases you have in most college towns as relates to baseball, it becomes a Olympic sport, as we call it, versus a revenue sport. And as soon as you change that title from Olympic or revenue to Olympic sport, that becomes limiting those resources and, preventing more than the 11.7 scholarships to go to those student athletes, which makes it tough, as Coach said, for student athletes and families to afford that sport.
One of the issues we've seen in the basketball world is we've listened to increased dialogue over the last 2 or 3 weeks is admission criteria relative to the NCAA eligibility center and the it's a sliding scale with your GPA and your test scores, but what it doesn't account for is the potentially different levels of training relative to the schools you came up with, oftentimes from the communities you grew up in. And that can speak to the systematic racism of the system potentially. And so I'm wondering, is that issue an issue in baseball as well? Is it that much harder to get a kid to quote unquote qualify based on where he might have grew up or how he might have been prepared academically? And well, let's start with that.
Yeah. Well, your environment tells a lot about where you're going in life. I mean, we have to look at it from that standpoint because we have statistics to show that kids who come out of a really good environment succeed better, they do better academically than the kids who come out of very difficult environment. Back when I can only use my situation. I got kids out of those difficult situations. And I sold them on the plane of a better life. To believe in it. And they all 80% of them graduated. And I told them that you don't want to go back home. Elevate, make your mama happy. Elevate yourself, get that degree. You'll be able to get a better job. When you have you're going to feel good about it. And so that's what I did. But again, it still doesn't help all the ones that are left behind get out of the situation. I think that's where our government and our people in leadership role who can make a difference by providing more opportunity. And I think with the protests and all what's going on now, it's probably opening people's eyes. You're not going to be able to leave people behind and keep suppressing them. At some point, it's a bubbling thing. It gets hot and the lid comes off and explodes, and a lot of innocent people get hurt. When it's so much easier to love your brother, even though they're less fortunate, and help them, because it makes the world a better situation.
So Coach, that leads me to another question. As I mentioned, someone compared you to John Thompson in my research, said the baseball's version of John Thompson. And then as I'm doing research, I also find that but your teams were not, they were not all black. I mean, you were well known for recruiting white players, and for some people even credit you with having. And I know you told me off air that this isn't. We haven't fact checked this yet, but you are widely credited for helping young men across multiple races. So speak to me about that, because 1985, I think it's human nature, not just in 1985, but anytime, to say, as a black man, to want to help black kids who are maybe disadvantaged, but you went and reached out to everybody. So talk to me about that, if you would.
Well, when you have Bible knowledge it makes a big difference. And I had Bible knowledge, and I credit my wife because I knew nothing about the Bible until I met her. And I learned so much about we all are God's children. We all are God's children. So you can't start leaving people behind. And so I had to do something. And my wife and I talked about it. She said, do what's in your heart. Help all those kids. There's a God out there who's looking at you. And I made sure I did it. And in the 90s, I had kids from 5 different continents.
Wow.
I had 5 different continent kids on my team. It's if that ain't diversity, you tell me what it is. And they all got along together. I make it a point that we have to live together. We have to share together. We have to help each other. And when one cries, all of us cry. And that's the kind of thing that I was selling. Now, I was a successful coach in terms of wins and losses, producing a lot of kids into professional sport. But that's not what I did best. That's not what I did best. Motivating, selling the thing, getting that community of Baton Rouge. That's another thing. I had to help the community of Baton Rouge understand that Southern University was not what was portrayed on television in a negative. And that's what I did. I took my kids into the white communities, and we did camps, and we embraced the young people in that. And what I tell you, let me tell you, we were the most sought after teams. Whenever people wanted someone, they always called and wanted the baseball team.
There had to have been moments of adversity there, though, because I'm sorry.
There was a lot of adversity, but it didn't matter. It really didn't matter because I knew it had to be done. And I didn't go to the chancellor, the president, or the athletic director. I did it because I knew it was the right thing to do. And I give Skip Berkman, when he came in, he and I met, and he said, "Big guy, the city is big enough for both of us. You got to do that." That's what I did. And sometimes his player and my player, we went out to do it. We tore so many bridges down. It was just a beautiful thing.
Claudell, how does that I know you never played for him. I know you never coached against him, but at the beginning of this episode, you talked about, you didn't use the word mentor, but you cited his leadership. What was the impact like for the generation of coaches who followed Coach Cador, and how did whether it's you or peers of you, how did you work to incorporate those things? Because I know basketball, again, I'm going to continue to draw the analogies to basketball. Basketball coaches, not just on the floor, but even the way they run their programs, it's a copycat system. Everybody tries to emulate the one who's got the most success, and I would imagine it's baseball can be comparable. So when you see what Coach Cador is doing, how did that impact you personally and/or your generation of players and coaches?
It's a great impact. Seeing how we had to do the same thing in the Tidewater or 757 region now to get Norfolk State's program out into the community, get Norfolk State's players out into the different scouting workouts and combines, get our brand off campus and into the community so that ones would want to receive our recruiting materials and attend our camps and attend our events, and seeing how we overcame all those challenges to run major fundraisers and run major golf tournaments and run major community initiatives and really have our surrounding community and even region to buy into our program to rival some of the state's largest programs. So the things he said, we had to also go through. We had a legendary coach here, Marty Miller, who I played for and coached afterwards, and had to do the same thing. Was certainly in the area, and Coach remembers him, certainly in the same area as Coach was in, to have to break down all these barriers and gave kids who no one else could even get through the admissions doors a chance. No one else who could even fund a chance to kind of get on campus and to give them the framework and the outline of a dream and have those players matriculate through in 4 or 5 years to realize that dream. So, the example that was set here in front of my eyes, and then I would always look out. Computers weren't as fast at that point. They were in publications to see what Coach and the other guys were doing in the SWAC was certainly a great influence. So I had it both ways to shape my coaching style and to shape how we were going to get players, again, who no one else would give a chance, myself included. 0 scholarships, 0 recruiting phone calls, 0 recruiting letters, nothing. So, Norfolk State just giving me a chance really to not only play college baseball and play professional baseball, but to coach baseball, and just using that example to give to other kids who were not necessarily on the radar a chance to get to college and to achieve at the highest level that college sports will allow you to, and even go into the pros. So certainly resonate with what Coach has gone through. Again, a great example. I hope this dialogue will be a great example to other coaches. And just as he said, you didn't get all the recognition for it. You didn't get all the publicity for it. You didn't get the job titles for it. You didn't get the pay raises for it. But we did it out of our hearts because we knew the program and ourselves would be blessed for helping those less fortunate. And that's why we still do what we do to this day.
Well, that's a good segue when you talk about what you do to this day. How have your careers evolved beyond just coaching on the diamond? Now, Coach Cador, correct me if I'm wrong, but are you still in the dugout there? I don't even know the baseball terminology. I would have said on the sideline for basketball, but you're no longer on the coaching third base, right?
So I retired 3 years ago, and I've enjoyed myself. I've been doing a lot of traveling until this virus hit.
Yeah.
So it really keep me at home. But I'm still active in the community. I do a TV show that I've been doing for 16 years that has really allowed me to get information out to the public. And it's one of the highly rated TV shows. I mean, it's not, I have fun. Let me tell you this. It paid me all those years. I had a lot of fun at Southern. And
I believe
it. And my TV show brings that out where we have fun. I do a lot of things that coaches wouldn't even dream of doing. People want to see the humor side of the coach. You got me? And that's what I do.
And what is your main mission now, sir? Without a team, what is the, aside from having fun, whether it comes, what is your driving motivation now?
Well, to still help the community that I live in. Remember, community is a constant revolving. They need help. People need to keep getting positive stuff fed into them. If you don't feed them positive stuff, some kind of way negative start getting in there. And we have to do it because of the challenges. See, what I try to tell older people, in particular white people, about young people, I said, when I was growing up, I grew up in a segregated situation. You all made us feel we didn't deserve certain things, even though we felt we deserved. But the kids today, they've gone to school with your kid, and they have the same thing your kid have. And I'll be doing, if you're going to tell them they don't deserve it, then you got a problem. My son doesn't understand. My son never thought that. He said, Dad, you didn't do all those things. No way. He wouldn't know. You got me? But I did. And but the life he grew up is totally different from the life I did. And we have to understand that about our young people. So don't look at the color of their skin and think you're going to put them in a box because of the color of the skin. You better treat them with respect and dignity. And once you do, you got a chance.
Yeah, of course. Coach Clark, how about you? Because you were, you went from a player at Norfolk State to a coach, then to the athletic director. So you really went full circle there. But then you transitioned away, and now you two have been really dedicated to helping your community. So what is the primary motivation now, and what roads has that led you down?
Certainly. Again, coaching, playing, served as assistant athletic director at the same time as coaching. So just a great knowledge base, taking me to Norfolk Fest events where we produced some of the largest events, outdoor events, community events on the East Coast. And now to the Hampton Roads Sports Commission, an affiliate of the Hampton Roads Chamber, just bringing youth into the region of our 757 right here in the middle Atlantic area. Obviously, due to COVID-19, we've had to kind of curtail those plans, but we did have scheduled the largest youth event in the country, the AAU Junior Olympics, coming to our region at the end of July and August. So I say all that to say, I'm still focused on opportunities for youth athletes in all sports now, not just baseball, and focused on opening doors for sports related opportunities in our region here and even beyond the region in a multitude of sports. As we talked earlier, access to things. Everybody won't be a baseball player. Everybody won't be a basketball player. But would a minority have access to hockey, which we have here? Would they have access to field hockey, which we have here? Would they have access to some of your non-traditional sports outside of the baseball, football, basketball, track? And it's my goal to make regional coaching clinics and have sports here in the regional area to just serve as the example that these things can occur and that you do have access to these sports, and that if you have access, you have a chance. And if you have a chance, this could turn into reality as it relates to high school, college, or even the pros.
And I would suspect that some of those kids, it's just a matter of introducing them to different sports, and maybe they develop, maybe they find something almost by accident they didn't know they were passionate about. I mean, the amount of athletes we've seen over the years who play, grow up playing one sport and then transition into another is pretty daunting. How much of a opportunity does that create for any kid, regardless of skin color, who's trying to create, who comes from humble beginnings? Is that sport specific because of the scholarships? I mean, if I'm a, if you go to a kid and he's a baseball player, is the potential to get a free education as prevalent in those non-revenue sports? I guess what I'm trying to do is bring this full circle, connect the conversation where you talk about using different sports as opportunities for kids that wouldn't otherwise be exposed to them. But is there opportunity to take them beyond just, does that sport possess the opportunity to help level this gap that we've seen?
Well, I certainly think so. It's no different than fishing or some other non-related sports-related activity. If you just expose a child to something, expose a youth to something, give them opportunity that they might not otherwise get, they can fathom that, and they may find what they're good at or what they're best at. And when you give children and human beings the opportunity to find out what they're best at, that's where their comfort zone is. And when you're best at something, or when you're most comfortable at something, you feel like you compete on the highest level. And as we all know, college sports, pro sports, and beyond, you have to be the best. You have to be very competitive to achieve those levels. And so what we want to do as college coaches and community leaders, former college coaches, we wanted to set the stage for a child to explore multiple sports as he's coming through, to see if basketball, to see if golf, to see if hockey, to see if football is what they're best at, or could they do multiple sports? And as they develop that pathway, then they can find out what they're best at in college. But if they've never had those opportunities to play an array of things, only what the neighbor has played or only what the neighborhood rec center offers, then they would not know what their capabilities are. And that's how minorities have branched out. How would one ever known if they could be good at tennis? How would one ever known if they could be good at golf? How would one ever known if they could be good at skateboarding or cycling, unless they've been given these opportunities and become trailblazers? So it's our job to affect our circle of influence, coaches in Baton Rouge and in the South. I'm still here in the Mid-Atlantic. We can't control everything, but it's our job to control what we can control in our circles to keep providing opportunities. And if that's what we can do for a child to see something outside of what he sees every night, or in football and basketball, nothing wrong with that. But if he can see something different, then guess what? He could be a trailblazer and open up doors for others.
Absolutely. Coach Cador, you mentioned a moment ago that you talked about your advice, and specifically to white people. That I think is the question that has been asked as much as anyone that I've heard over the last couple of weeks, is people who probably look like me saying, what can we do? And having the discussions, having the conversations, and listening was and continues to be an obvious necessity as the first step. But then when it comes to action, given your history, sir, and all that you've experienced, if someone said to you, what can I do? What would you recommend me to do? With an action item, not just being open-minded and engaging in the dialogue and trying to learn, but what action items would you offer?
What I offer? Well, I try to make myself available for communication. I do a lot of speaking to white groups. Okay, I'm on a lot of boards, and I become spokesperson for them because they ask me to, because I'm well known in the Baton Rouge community, and I hate to use that word, well known. A lot of people know about me. Is that the way to put it? Because when you do what I've done, people get to hear about you. The other thing is that I did a lot of things with fundraising. I raised all the money to build a baseball field.
Mm-hmm.
The last project I raised $1.3 million twice to build a clubhouse. The first $1 million they took to finish the football stadium. So I didn't get to use that. Go back out and find some more. And the good Lord, rather than get angry, I went out and find the money to build the clubhouse. And who you think helped me get the money? It wasn't the black community. It was the people in the white community who donated the money. And that's who made it happen. Every year I raised a minimum of $50,000. I did a fundraiser for 13 years with Major League Baseball. We raised an average of $50,000 to $60,000 a year for the baseball program. And we sold the outfield signs on the baseball field. $3,000 a hit, we had 60 signs.
Right.
My point is, when you do what is right by the people who are in power, see, you can't get angry with the people who are in power. You have to do something to get them to help you. You see what I'm saying? And that's what we did. So we were able to raise a lot of money, and that I didn't need the university. After they paid my salary and paid the scholarship and paid my assistant coaches, that's all they did. I did all the other stuff without having to ask them for anything.
So,
then I became independent.
So is that a sentiment for people who say, what can I do? Would that be something you would recommend? Is find places where you can put, these are my words, put your money where your mouth is, so to speak, and contribute and help a kid who wouldn't otherwise have an opportunity?
That's right. You at least giving them and showing them that I'm willing to help you. Because when I got there was no baseball field. That was nothing. Everything baseball owned was in a grocery basket or great store. And rather than, again, I just found a way deep down inside every day, staying positive to make things happen. Did I get angry? Yes. But I wouldn't let my players see it. Because when you're leading, you got to show strength and confidence or do what you do. So I wanted my players to be more confident. So when I wasn't there, I had a kid came on a visit and I wasn't at practice one day. And he came to me and he said, "Coach, I can't believe it. No coach was out there and the players practice. I said, the coach was there." I said, "What else did you expect?" He said, "Well, I come from players played around." I said, "Not these guys. They understand what they have to do." So those are the kinds of things you give kids value. You give them value and they want that. They want discipline and value. And you give it to them, they'll shine like a spit shine shoe. Ooh, you know what a spit shine shoe? I don't know.
Coach Clark, how would you answer that question? If somebody said to you, what can I do? What would your response be?
Well, something we're doing here at the chamber, the HR chamber, Hampton Roads chamber, and our sports commission. We're engaging in some tough and real and even at times uncomfortable dialogue with a number of committees that we've commissioned and that were already in existence as relates to diversity and inclusion. So I agree with everything Coach has said, and just adding to it, anytime you're in a position of power and you have persons of power on your boards and that you're affiliated with, mobilize and task these people with having tough conversations about how they run their businesses, tough conversations about how minorities are able to get jobs and matriculate through in the business world and the sports world, have tough conversations about, how the experiences of African Americans and minorities are different than, say, Caucasians. Have tough conversation about the opportunities given to African American and minority high schoolers moving from the high school level to the college level, from colleges to internship to jobs. Let's talk about these challenges. Let's talk about having to have the wallet on the dashboard if the trip is longer than 30 minutes or an hour, so that a police officer doesn't see you reaching for your wallet in your pocket or glove compartment. But let's talk about the uncomfortable situations that persons are in. And then when you have that dialogue, it gets uncomfortable, but it's a great platform for awareness for people to start talking about, hey, this is what's going on. Let's not hide from it. As one of my administrators and I talked, hey, everybody's not friends like ones might have thought. There's some huge disparities and there's some huge racial divides. Let's let these situations not be in vain, as Floyd's brother said in court. Let's not let them be in vain, but use this awareness and use this heightened sense of urgency in the nation now to bring these things to the forefront. And also something we said happened, let's not let the energy die, and right. 2 months, 3 months, 5 months, 6 months, something else comes to the forefront and this just dies. No, let these conversations be ongoing. Let it be a show like Coach said. Let it be podcasts like we're having now. Let it be commissions and task force and subcommittees like we formed in the chamber and the HRSC, and let these things be ongoing. Let officers be permanently installed to make sure that persons are given a fair voice and the conversation continues until this thing is one day rooted out. There's always been conflicts and wars and rumors of wars, as folks say. So it may never be rooted out. It may never be changed, but we'll always have the arguments. We'll always have the conversations. We'll always fight this fight.
And hopefully there will be progress. That was a point that Conzo Martin made last week. He said that, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said that as tragic as the coronavirus has been, if there could possibly be a silver lining, it may be the fact that things are kind of, things are still slower now. So it gives us, there is no distraction coming up. There is no game that could otherwise distract us. So it gives us a unique point in time to really deal with this issue in a way that we haven't, certainly in my lifetime. My final question for both of you is, over the course of the last few weeks, as we've tried to have conversations like this, whether it's on the podcast or just personally, I think one of the things that I've learned is that sometimes we don't even know the right questions to ask. And so my final question to both of you would be, what haven't I asked, and what is important for you to share that you haven't gotten a chance to yet?
That's a
Go ahead, Coach.
Question there. What question? Well, I don't know what question you haven't asked because I don't. That's good. But we've talked about a variety of things. We needed to mention that since we were talking about baseball, and we not largely, but how the numbers have dropped from high school to college to the professional range. And we look at it, and it's a staggering amount of kids. And if I can go back, because again, I came out of segregation in the 60s.
Yeah.
When integration started in the state of Louisiana, 1971, I was 1 year removed from high school.
Wow.
I remember when I got to Southern, and the baseball coach, said to me, Cador, I won't be coaching this game much longer. And I said, Coach, why? He said, integration is going to kill baseball. And I said, why is it going to kill it, Coach? He said, well, they're going to integrate the high school, and they're going to take the best kids away from the black schools, and they're going to let them play football, track. He didn't mention basketball. He said, and the white coach won't let them play baseball. So they won't be getting, we won't no longer get it. And he was correct to a large extent that has happened with a lot of situations. And there are still neighborhoods in Louisiana where a black kid can barely get on the baseball field because the parents have the money. And everything is driven by money with some of these private schools who have pretty good programs. And the black kids can't participate. So he was right. I wish he was alive so he could see, and I could go to him and say, Coach, you were correct. Integration killed black baseball because of what happened in the high school. If you can't produce them from high school to college, you sure ain't going to get them to the pros. And that's why you see the big drop off.
Coach Clark, what would I'd pose the same question to you? What questions have I not asked, or what message is important to leave here?
Well, first of all, and to continue maybe a sentence or two to what Coach has said,
Please,
people don't realize, due to the economic situation the country is in, the minor leagues, the COVID situation, the draft, again, as I've said, has condensed from 40 rounds to about 7 or 8 rounds. So just think about that. You know, how much more of a tight situation is that going to make for all baseball players, but especially for minorities when the numbers are already low. So that could be permanent damage. So how does we as college baseball coaches and the baseball community and the major leagues combat that? That's a problem in itself. That's a challenge in itself. I think the two things are education. So we talk about the protest, and we talk about police brutality or racial situations. But let's educate our youth and our own selves on the percentages of these things and the percentages of African Americans who get targeted by police, or the percentages of African Americans who get targeted for traffic stops and things of this nature. So let's continue to throw the numbers out there, which are staggering. I've researched some of these things due to this latest situation and other situations, and even in preparation for the show. And numbers are staggering about how the disparity between white and black and how folks are treated. And a lot of these.
Where's a good? I don't mean to cut you off, but I think that's a really important point, because I think the numbers, with all the conversations that we've had, I was telling my wife this the other day. I think educating people is really important, and there are some people who are going to be very open to this. There are others who are going to be more reluctant, and I think that the numbers and when you start getting to tangible facts, that's when you have an opportunity to potentially change some minds. So, and I apologize if I'm putting you on the spot here, but where would you go if someone said, well, what numbers are you talking about, or where can I find those numbers? Where would you point people?
This situation has become so prevalent, you don't have to go any further than Google or MSN.com. The numbers are there for you as it relates to, police statistics, as it relates to students matriculating through colleges and getting jobs or not getting jobs, youth baseball and all sport players on getting opportunities in the college level and professional level and obtaining scholarships. All those numbers are there for you with just keywords. So not dodging the question, but it's so prevalent and it's so heightened in a good way by these situations that have happened. The numbers are right there for you every time you open your computer on, staggering facts as it relates to the disparity between races. And it's impossible to not view. Admittedly, having to work so hard, raising funds and different job opportunities and focusing on family and focusing on the players, our baseball families, as Coach said, oftentimes you'd be kind of shielded to the current events that are going on in the nation, but no longer can any of us be shielded from that. No longer can any of us be on the sidelines. And I've just, again, as I mentioned in the first part of the show, been appreciative how business leaders and sports leaders of all races have stepped up to say, no more. We're not going to sit on the sideline. We're not going to let this not be known as a major issue. Even the Jordan brand has put up $100 million over 10 years. People are starting to step out who have never been outspoken about this and have said, look, no more are we going to be different. No more is there going to be a disparity, and no more of these heinous acts going to take place without people stepping up and showing force in numbers. So I do think that mobilization is great. I think the education, to answer your question, is great. And I just hope that this will be an ongoing movement, not just overshadowed by the next global issue that we have.
Here. I think that the two important points I want to emphasize there is we talked about action items, what people can do. Well, to your point, Coach Clark, one of the things, education and dialogue is important, but you can have that self-dialogue, you can self-educate, and you can go in and research the numbers yourself. If you're at all skeptical, do the research. And what I would encourage people to do is to do the research, ask the same question from two different outlets, and if you get the same answer, in this day and age, you've just educated yourself. And I think that, I don't want to put words in your mouth at all, but what I'm hearing you talk about when you're talking about coaches and business leaders and giving opportunities to people who wouldn't otherwise have it, what I see is the example that Coach Cador set 30 years ago. And I think if more people can follow that path, that it will be a better country and a better world. So thank you both for being here. As I said, this is, exploring baseball is first time we've ever done this, but I think what it does is it really exposes that these issues, that we may see in basketball, when you see the exact same issues in baseball, maybe even the issues to a greater extent, certainly when it comes to access to resources, that really goes to show that the issues can be systemic. So that's the reason we wanted to have this conversation, which is a little bit off subject for us, but just to expose that there are certainly commonalities across the board. So I thank you both for being here and for sharing your perspective.
Yes, sir, Adam. Thank you.
Take care, big guy.